All right, so this is going to be a little crash course on how to use Substance Designer. It's going to be kind of fast-paced, but still going to go over a lot of the basics that a lot of other tutorials miss. So let's go ahead and just jump into this. We're going to click File, New Substance, and more than likely you just want to generate a material, right? And so that's what we're going to be doing in this one. We got PBR Metallic Roughness is the template we're going to be using, and this is all default. All right, we're not even going to worry about changing any of this, but I just want to point out that relative to parent means that the node you insert, it's going to, when you hook up the node before it, it's going to adopt all of its properties when it comes to size, okay, and format. So the format's going to be whether it's like grayscale or color, if it's a 8-bit, 16-bit, or etc. Right? Just keep that in mind. That's important, okay, to make sure it says that. When we open up this graph, we can middle mouse click and mouse wheel in and out to zoom around and move around. Very simple. And they're set up like this right now. There's a color and an output. Okay, and so these are very simple. There's a uniform color, okay, right, and then there's an output right here. And that's going to be this little node here. Okay, a couple different ways you can create nodes. You could do that, of course. You could right click, add node, but you also have the option of pressing spacebar. You can get all of them right here as well. Okay, uniform color. You can work in color. You can work in grayscale. You can use this little square, kind of make adjustments here, or you could use the sliders. Simple enough. Everything that you're going to adjust pretty much is down here, usually in the parameters, right? And so output, on the other hand, a little bit more complicated to set up. This one is already configured, but let's create a new one. Just drag it over for a second. And you'll see here that we have format, bitmaps. You could change those if you need to, but usually you want to add an item. And let's say we wanted to create an emissive or a diffuse or whatever the case may be. We can go ahead and change that there. The identifier is unique for Substance Designer, meaning it just needs a unique name. You could literally just type garbage if you wanted to. It wouldn't matter. And but generally, we'll say this is missive 1 or something, right? And then for the label, this does actually matter though. So you might want to just put in the proper name of whatever it is you're trying to output. And this is going to be what texture is generated. Okay, and then because it's relative to parent, it's going to adopt whatever's before it. Now each one of these nodes you'll see here at the bottom, it has the resolution and it has color 8-bit, right? And this will actually change somewhere along the line here. You'll see that it has luminance 8-bit, okay? Grayscale. That's only two different things right there, okay? And so they might be 8-bit or 16-bit or 32-bit, but it just depends on what you're doing and how you're creating things. So we have one for base color, we have one for normal. The normal here usually has a normal node in front of it. So that's the normal node right there at the top, right? So just keep that in mind. Now we have a roughness value. Okay. It just so happens that all of these are hooked up to the 3D view right now. By default, these aren't hooked up to the 3D view. So when you're setting up new outputs, you will have to right click these and drag them over and then plug them into the appropriate slot here. So in this case, we're working with, what was this, roughness? It would be roughness, right? And so that would actually make it work over here. And so we can adjust the roughness. If you're new to PBR materials, roughness, black and white image, right? If it's pure white, it's rough. If it's pure black, it's really glossy, basically. That's all that's going on. So we just click and orbit around in here, mouse wheel in and out, and all that fun stuff, right? And so we can make adjustments that easy with just a basic color node, right? Same for metallic, and usually metallics are black, not metallic, or white metallic. There's usually nothing in between, unless you're going for like a real weird kind of composite sci-fi material or something, but like alien spacecraft type deal. Okay. Ambient occlusion just has a color node hooked up to it, and height map. Okay. So you can of course create more if you want. Kind of showed you how to set that output up, but let's go ahead and use these now. So first things first, I know I'm going to be using this normal, so I'm going to drag it out. Okay. This ambient occlusion, I'm going to delete that. Press the delete key. That's it. I'm going to drag out a dot node here. So click drag. Oh, select it first. I'm going to click and drag. And so there's something called a dot node. And this helps with organization. Use these when you need them, but don't overuse them because it takes more time to kind of keep things organized sometimes. But you'll see that dot node is just basically a branch type element. So you can create a dot anywhere on the graph here, right? So you press Alt and just place another dot. Or if you were to say like you were dragging out a line and you need to create a dot real quick, you just press Alt, kind of move things along, right? Now, when you want to delete something but you don't want to break the branch here, you can hit backspace, okay? Or you can hit delete and do things like that. Cool, right? Okay, so what we want to do is without anything selected. Now, normally when you have a node selected, if it's in grayscale, it's gonna, and you hit the space bar, you're gonna only find grayscale things. If it's in color, you're only gonna find color things usually. In this case, we want to make sure nothing's selected, so we get all of them, and we can do ambient occlusion. So just type in ambient, and then occlusion will pop up with this node. Insert it, connect it. We're gonna drag the dot node to it. Now this is red because it's an error, and that's okay for now. Okay. The reason it's throwing that error is because it has no parent to input information, so it all kind of acts badly right now. Okay. And so we can connect all this together. Generally speaking, the workflow is going to go something like this. You're going to create a height map, you're going to create your color map, and then your roughness and metallic. And probably use pretty much everything off the height map to create all the others for the most part. And so that's pretty simple, right? Now, take a look over here at our graph. We haven't named this by default. Okay. Remember, we skipped that step. You can just right click over here and rename it, right? Just going to call it new material, right? And this package is unsaved, so we can save it somewhere. I have a folder with all of these kind of piling up now. And so I can just save it there. And you'll see that it becomes new material.sbs. Okay. When you want to publish this later on so other people can use it, or you might want to use it in Substance Painter, you can export a SBS AR. You click here, and you'll see that there's a publish button. And so this is where all your SBS AR files should be located, somewhere in your Substance shelf. And so you'll always have that inside of Substance Painter if you need it. Okay. Now, we'll probably do that here a little bit later on so we can play around with what we create in Substance Painter. So for now, let's go ahead and talk about nodes. This I don't use a whole lot, so I like to take the library and drag it on top of the Explorer and just do this number. So we have like a split view here, or two tabs. And so we could do this, and I'll drag this open a little bit more so I can see all my nodes I'm going to be using. There's a couple different types of nodes that you're going to be working with. For the most part, as a beginner, you're going to be using generators. So the generators, you got basically noise generators or texture generators, right? Pretty simple. And then you got patterns, which create shapes, usually. Okay. And they might do some other things like splatter shapes around and scatter them and stuff like that. So those two generator sections are pretty important. There's a lot of stuff in here to utilize and work with, all right? So if I was to take, for example, let's do cells 1, drop it here. We'll see cells 1. We can just go ahead and plug it into this. And right now, this is what we're getting. This down here is using a shader that's not fully set up. So we can go to Materials, Default, and we can click Edit. And we can further refine this shader once we do that. You'll see all of our options over here for it, right? And so if you ever accidentally mess something up, you can always reset them as well. Just clicking on the little reset icon. In this case, we have no height information kind of showing up, and that's because the scale is set to 0. We can bump that up, and it's using parallax occlusion right now to fake geometry, basically, or a fake depth data anyways, with a little shader trick there. We can change this to real geometry by going default. We can change our shader here to the tessellation version, okay? And then now the tessellation version, you'll see that we have scale here set. We can bump up the tessellation factors, long tessellation factor, and we can adjust our scale. And so this is actual geometry at least. And so we can see what's going on with that now, okay? We'll click on cells again real quick, and you'll see we can change a lot of parameters in here. We can change the scale and change the disorder. Actually, it's not a whole lot in this one, but a lot of the nodes will have a lot of settings over here to adjust. This just happens to be very, very simple, okay? And so let's go ahead and bring that one out. Let's go to patterns, and we're going to go ahead and drop in a simple pattern. Let's just do the star to get started here, and we're going to drop this in right here, okay? You'll see it didn't connect. It's not going to. because there's no input on it, right? So we have to actually blend these two together. This is kind of interesting because we can certainly do that. Notice when I select a node, the image here doesn't change. You have to double click to preview that node, but you can work on another node while that preview is still up. So you can actually look at something down the line while you're making adjustments to something above the line. So we'll do that here in a sec, but we need to blend these. So we're going to drag out, we're going to do a blend. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and plug this one into the top, plug this into there. Okay. And we'll see here is that we can actually adjust the values for the blend. We can change the opacity. We do something like that. Okay. Or we could do something else like multiply or something like that. You can actually mouse wheel through these if you wanted to. All right. And so this can be quite useful. Generally speaking, when creating height maps, it's not a good idea to use pure black and white. Okay, you want to kind of be near the middle because on middle gray is going to be like a 0, and then if you go to the black side, it's going to be like a -1. And if you go to the white side, it's going to be a +1. And so somewhere in the middle is usually kind of centered up. But what this gives you the ability to do is actually be able to subtract from or add to your height. Okay, so using the blend nodes. Here we have, we add to it. There's no room for it to add anymore, so there's no effect, there's no texture on top, right? And if we were to subtract from this, we'll see that there's no room in the background to subtract from, so it just flattens everything out. So we can adjust how bright this is by using a levels. So we'll drag out a node here, and we'll type in levels. You'll see it comes in, it's not connected. But if we were to take this bottom slider and move it out this way and move it in this way, you'll see we kind of flatten out the grays there, or it's no longer black and white, it's more centered gray now. And so when we push this in here, we'll see real quick that this becomes, if I add to it, we get a little bit of an addition there, okay? And then if I was to subtract from it, we'll get a little bit of a subtraction going on, right? And so we're able to do that now, whereas before it would just bottom out basically. All right, and this is going to introduce you to the idea of just layering your heights up and down, back and forth, so you can get the desired results you want. Okay, this is kind of a rough example, but hopefully you get the idea because it allows you to just make little fine-tuned adjustments to everything. Okay, so I'm going to double click over here. This is our blend, of course. We're looking at it, and now we can go ahead and drop in something a little bit more fun. We're going to do splatter circular. Okay. And with splatter circular here, you'll notice that it has a pattern input. All right. And these things always disappear, and that can be kind of troublesome sometimes. But pattern input, just remember, these shapes are patterns. Okay. Plug it in. That's where you plug it in. Okay. Now I can plug it in over here. And we have it set up like so. And you can see what's going on here. These are not stars, so that's a little bit of a problem. With splatter circular here, what we can do is we can come down here. It says pattern. It's set by default to a paraboloid, but the thing is you can set it to square or any other kind of pattern you might want to generate. But we also have one called image input, and now we can actually input our image like so. You can see what it's doing here. Now we have a whole bunch of options to change how this may or may not work, and you'll see that if you change the radius here, it actually starts to like kind of look like it's bouncing around almost, which is kind of cool. But you can certainly make all kinds of different changes over here. Play around with these sliders. If you ever mess it up, you know, you can always just delete a node and put it back in if you need to or something like that. They also, I think, have little resets in here. Yeah, but that could be a little bit annoying when you changed all of them, right? And maybe the main one, somehow you can reset it all. Yeah, reset all there. So you could always try that as well. All right, but now we're well on our way to making whatever it is that we want to make. Now, personally, I know I want to create something a little bit more useful than this, so I'm going to go ahead and start deleting these real quick. You just click and drag across all of them, just delete them. It's fine. We still have that dot node left over, so we don't have to hook all that back up, which is nice. And so what I might want to do is take like a very basic cloud kind of pattern or something like that, or noise, not pattern, sorry. So there's like clouds 2s. Yeah, let's do clouds 2. And so we don't have to connect them right away. We can just kind of see what's going on down here and pay attention to how dark and how bright things get, and kind of determine what our height maps might be. So in that case, let's go ahead and do a pattern. There's all kinds of generators in here. There's tile generators, tile random generators. We're just going to toss one in for now, so we can mix these two together. But this here, I want to have a little bit more like rounded edges and stuff. There's a lot of different filters you're going to end up using, and they're really hard to tell. Instead of expanding filters out, just click filters. Sometimes it's really hard to remember all these, but these are going to be the ones you need to focus on as a beginner. And so one of these happens to be the bevel one here. And so we're going to go ahead and pull out bevel, connect it, double click on it. We can see what's going on here. And we can change the distance. There we go. Change the smoothing amount, whatever we want. And we can drag out from the height here. Go ahead and do a blend. Now we can go ahead and toss that into there. All right. And so we can mix these now. Get some different results out of this if we want. You see, it's pretty bright, and I don't know if I necessarily like that. So what we're going to do is run it into a levels. And then we're going to go ahead and reattach it. And now we can bump the brightness, the darkness back to the middle a little bit. Take a look at this now. It's still very bright. This might be because of this one. Might also use levels on this. You can also use a different node called histogram. So you got histogram range here. This one could be quite useful. Sometimes it's a little simpler to utilize this one. You can see how you can change things like that, right? All right. So now we got something like that going on, which isn't too bad. That's very soft though. So if we plug it in, you'll see what's going on here. But it might be something you want if you want more like a more worn, weathered kind of look or something going on. But you can always generate a different branch here. So you can even adopt from this one. You could like copy this and paste it, and then bring it down here, make some adjustments to the distance, to the smoothing, all that fun stuff, right? And maybe even start a new shape. So Control C, Control V, just copy and paste these out. And you should be able to make some adjustments here for the tiles as well. I don't really want to change anything other than maybe the gaps in the middle. And so I think I might have went past it though. Yeah, I don't think I can change that much. It might be like a scale. Sometimes little things need adjustments. Yeah, that's the threshold. But size? No. Oh, this was the one. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Just something real faint. Nothing real strong, right? Because it's going to go back through a bevel. And we're going to try to tighten this one up a little bit. It's more like this. Less smoothing. Okay, and we can actually blend these two together now. And if you're wondering how it turned into a normal there, it's because I double clicked on the output there. So we plug these two together now and blend them. Maybe turn it down a little bit. You start to see we're getting some kind of like brick textures, tiles, those kind of things, right? Not really a great blend because remember this is doing an add here. It's adding a bunch of really bright colors together, so we might want to do another levels or a histogram or something like that. And we can go ahead and bump it down a little bit so we get a little bit more texture on top of it, right? Do something like that. See how that works? Okay, pretty cool. All right, and so we're going to go with this just as the basics for now. You can, of course, build out nodes that are much more complicated than this. But I want to go ahead and move in to some other territory here. All right, and that's going to be base color. So right now it's just gray. I'm going to delete it real quick. And I'm actually going to drag out from this one. I could drag out from this one. Let's do that. I'm going to drag all the way out with this one. I hit Alt and then create a dot node. They kind of have its own little branch coming up here. A lot of times you can make your colors off of these heights real quickly by running them into a gradient map. Okay, and a gradient map pops out. Now we can go ahead and plug that in there. And this is really fun because what's going to happen here is this gradient, we can go into the gradient editor. And now we can actually set this up however we choose fit. So you'll see we have some darker areas and we have some lighter areas, right? And when we click up here, we have dark. And so let's say that's dirt, we'll make it brown. Like a more orangey brown. And up here, let's say this is just something like, it's still pretty dirty, but it's lighter. Like a more yellowish kind of grayish kind of color there, right? So we can adjust that very quickly. And now what this allows you to do is somewhere in the middle, maybe it's got some greens going on or something, I don't know. And we can adjust kind of those middle colors there. Usually you want to keep these about mid-tone, by the way. But let's say we're over here. We want a little bit of green somewhere, but we don't want this to change too much. We want like a little layer of dirt in here. But we could do things like this though, right? That's no problem. We want like a little bit more of a sandy color over here. So we make like really fine strips based on the height where we need them. We could do something like that if we really wanted, right? Pretty cool. So that's just the way you could utilize the gradients to achieve what you want. Now, obviously, that looks ridiculous, but we're going to go ahead and maybe we want like a little bit of like a highlight near the edges here. All right. There's better ways of getting the edges, but you can force this a little bit. You can see how we can move it around. There's also a node called edge detect, which helps with things like this sometimes. You got to blend it back in weird ways, but you can see where we're going, right? Very simple, very easy, and just like that, you thought Substance Painter was hard, or Substance Designer. It's not. And the more you get into this, the more fun you're going to have. Now, also keep in mind, because Substance Designer usually works in grayscale or color, a lot of these nodes here, you think it's a lot that you have to remember, and it looks like that. But a lot of these, in fact, have a color and a grayscale version, so it's roughly about half of this, right? It's not that much to remember. And that's going to help you out a little bit. When it comes to the roughness and the metallic, we don't need any metallic information, so we're not even going to touch that one. But the roughness here, we can actually do something real simple, like maybe we want to use the same texture again. And we'll blend this with something else. We'll plug it into roughness. Okay. So what we should be seeing here, it's not updating for some reason. Oh, I guess because it's blending with black or something. I don't know. Anyway, so let's go ahead and add a different little roughness here, or a noise generator. Plug it in. Oh, there you go. You can see it just adds a little bit of variance to the roughness there. Just kind of nice, right? So we can tone that down a lot because these are supposed to be just kind of like bricks or whatever. But we could certainly go crazy with it if it was like wet bricks or something like that. And we'll just keep it as a simple little node setup like that now. We can also take something like the ambient occlusion here. And if we double click on this, this is the AO. We can adjust this. You don't want to overdo your AO. It can be kind of a bad thing, but keep it nice and tight if you need to. And make your adjustments however you see fit. But we can use this AO as well, and we can plug it into our roughness to kind of kill the reflectivity in the crevices here. So we could just simply drag it out, blend it, and you'll see we can plug those two together, plug them into there, and all we got to do is set a blend mode for this. I'm going to try multiply, see what we get. And by the looks of it, that didn't do a whole lot, but let's try a different blend mode here. Whoop, maybe one like that. What is that? Subtract. Okay, so we'll subtract from it, yeah. All right. Still a little bit too reflective in there for me. Maybe we can make an adjustment here. It makes a little bit more sense. So this is subtracting from whatever's underneath it. So we might need to adjust this AO a little bit more. Fortunately, we could just click, let's drag and do a, let's do a levels on it. And plug that in. So this will be a little bit more fine-tuned now at least. So we can bring the whole amount down or up as needed. So maybe I don't want the top that reflective. Then I can adjust this slider or this slider to make it even more dramatic here at the top, perhaps. Okay. We'll bring this one down. No, we're working in reverse. It's kind of messing with me right now. Right. See what we can get done here. This looks a little bit wrong. Might need to invert it. Looking like I kind of have to invert it or something, maybe. It doesn't make sense, right? I shouldn't have to invert it, but that's what it's looking like. So yeah, I like that a lot better. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring those ones. Well, no. Very interesting. Trying to get that just kind of killed off a little bit, you know? It's just, yeah, so maybe we'll just do a final correction here with another levels. We'll plug it in. And we'll just knock it back a little bit more. You can see how light gray that is, right? So, there. Not too bad. All right. And personally, I think that's a little too soft. So what I would probably do is go ahead and do a quick blend. And I might plug that one back in right there. Branch it down like that. And maybe just run this through again real quick. You can see that. That looks a lot more interesting like that, maybe. All right, so there we go. A lot of little tweaks and adjustments you, of course, can make. And this is just tapping the surface of it. This is getting a little bit out of control and a little bit wild. Sometimes, you know, it happens, but just keeping things kind of in line usually helps out quite a bit. So you can see like what's going on where and how and all that. And even making copies of things can help as well. So it's like a stretch back going that way is not always the best organization, right? But I'm going to leave the organization part up to you. And so I know that's going to be there. That's going to be there. Not too big of a deal. And the normal here we can also adjust, by the way. It has an intensity slider. You can make it more or less intense. You can actually bump this up pretty high sometimes. I'm going to set it to 5. You can put it up to like 20 if you wanted on some things, but it's pretty wild how it works out. It's a little bit more normal map. And there we go. For the most part, we have a PBR material we've created. It's not that bad. One thing I do want to mention is sometimes you will find yourself working with a node setup that is in color, and then it complains when you plug a linear color into it, or a luminance color. So when you plug grayscale into it, you can convert between grayscale and color. There's 2 nodes you need to remember. It's going to be grayscale conversion. Okay, let's go ahead and click nothing here. Grayscale conversion will take color and turn it into grayscale. So if you ever end up with red lines, usually this is what's going on. And then also a gradient. So we already created that gradient earlier. But the gradient map here, if you notice, it takes in a grayscale and turns it color, or you can also go the opposite by switching it to color, or grayscale, excuse me. You can do grayscale to grayscale, or color to grayscale, or all kinds of ways you can work with this, right? Color to grayscale, grayscale to grayscale, color to grayscale, or you know what I'm saying. Anyways, so gradient map and um, grayscale conversion. Okay, so that's it. Those two. You can swap between them if you need to. Now, since we already got all this kind of set up and done, let's say we wanted to paint this onto a model in Substance Painter. So we're going to actually do that now. We're going to go back to that Explorer. Oh, before we do, one little note. Let's go ahead and this is going to be a little bit complicated with this one. I don't even know if we can actually do it. Click OK real quick. I don't know if it worked. No, it doesn't look like it worked. But let's say we wanted to change the colors on this, right? Just ever so slightly so we can tweak it and adjust it. We can toss in like an HSL, right? So hue, saturation, luminance is what that stands for. We can go ahead and plug it in here. Bam. And now HSL, what it allows you to do is just hue, saturation, and luminance. But we can also just click here, batch expose parameters, and you can see we can expose hue, saturation, and lightness, luminance, lightness, whatever, same thing. And so we can actually do that. We can check those, click OK, and they're now going to be exposed. Okay, so you can expose parameters on different things. For example, like here's the normal map, the intensity of it. We're going to go ahead and expose as a new graph input. Okay, and you'll see here we get this crazy looking menu. Notice it has the identifier and the label. This is why those are important, right? This one here, we can give a custom label if we want. So we can say normal intensity. We'll just leave it like that for now, okay? And you'll see we have slider options. The default is 5, right? The min is 0, and the max is 3, but we could turn it all the way up to like 20 if we wanted. And okay, we're just going to click OK now. And that is going to become an adjustment slider for us. So let's go ahead and go back to the graph, Explorer, over here. And we can save this again real quick, and then we can export it. Okay, so hit the little export button. And we're going to it should come in with the same name, new material, whatever you saved it as originally and renamed it as. So new material, save, bam. When you export this out, what we're going to do is turn off pixel size because that's annoying and it gets in the way in your material. So we go ahead and do that. We go over to Substance Painter. I'm going to go ahead and load up the meat mat sample. So we got meat mat here. Open sample, meat mat. And somewhere in your material section, if you exported to your substance shelf, you have to set up a shelf or use the default shelf that's in like your documents folder or wherever it's located. When you export that SBSAR file into that shelf, it automatically loads up. And so we should be able to find somewhere in here that says new material, right? And so we can see there's new graph, new graph, new graph, new material. There it is. And so now we can actually just drag and drop this out, and voila, just like that, we have this going on. Okay. And so meat mat has 3 different materials applied to them, or 3 different sections, right? So now we can make adjustments with this material as well, because even though we just dragged it out, we have it selected, and you can see I've got my properties over here instead of on the right side. But you know, we can change now hue, saturation, right? Remember we exposed that, so now we're able to actually modify it. Now we can actually do saturation as well. I think what am I working on? The base. No, I'm not even working on the head. Okay. And so we can make it gray. We can make it colored. We can change the color a little bit. All right. There's other ways to blend colors and make them adjustable and stuff like that. We can also change how bright it is, how dark it is. We can also bump up that normal intensity or bump it down. Okay, and so anything you expose like that, you look for those little expose parameters. You can go ahead and do that, and you'll be able to adjust your material inside of Substance Painter. And right then and there, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I mean, there's other additional options in here, of course, like triplanar projection. So you can use things like that if you need to. But as far as Substance Designer goes, that little crash course there, hopefully you kind of get the idea of what's going on here now with Substance Designer, and you'll able to fully utilize it because once you get used to this, you can just toss materials together super fast and multiple materials at that, and make what otherwise would look like an extremely complicated kind of a material, and start to blend them here inside of a Substance Painter. So you make your base materials in Designer, bring them over to Painter, and then you can kind of mix and match them together here and mask them and do all kinds of other fun stuff. Because if I was to add a black mask and use an alpha, I'll let them all load, and then hold Control right click and set flow down a little bit. You see I can go ahead and I'm going to hit X to turn it. Right now my selection is I'm set to, well, if you press X, it goes back and forth. So I can set it to white. I can start to paint in those details like that, right? And do things like that. So we can start to blend our materials here on our model. But so you can have like different versions of plastics or different versions of metals, or some rust, some metal, and create them all yourself. You don't even have to necessarily download them anywhere. It's very easy to get into this once you start playing around with those nodes and learning how to set them up even more. So if you really want to see some excellent videos on how to set up more complicated type materials, I might do some in the future as I get more familiar with the software, but I can highly recommend checking out the NVIDIA Studios YouTube channel and look for the tutorials put out by Javier Perez. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, those are some of the better ones you're going to watch. And after watching this video, you should be able to jump into those and have no problems. He has an excellent workflow when it comes to laying out height maps, and then of course you can kind of explore on your own to create the other maps you need as well. Um, so yeah, your imagination is the limit. You can certainly take this and go crazy with it, right? And so now I can add kind of this reflective kind of metal on top of this, whatever this is supposed to be, and have a lot of fun with it, right? All right. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll check you out next time. All right, take care.